Well, it's 10 o'clock Pacific, so we're going to get started. Welcome, everybody, to the fourth in our series of Monday Mentoring Minutes. Thrilled to be joined. As you know, for those who have joined us before, we're here talking about topics that are really important in this time of crisis and uncertainty. And I thought we would wrap up our series with my friend, my colleague, Kate Sommer, who is an expert on a topic that I'm really passionate about, that's related very much and very much entwined with mentoring, which is this idea of forming your personal board of advisors. Kate, welcome. I'm thrilled to have you.
So much for having me. Thank you everyone for joining us today.
I want to welcome folks to put questions or comments in the chat. If you've joined us for the prior weeks, you know that we're monitoring that quite closely. I want to just introduce you quickly to Kate. Kate is a global speaker and international facilitator. She's passionate about being the CEO of your own life by forming your personal board of advisors. Kate had a very quick yes. I really appreciate people's enthusiastic yes, Kate, and yours especially, knowing what an important time this is. I'm hoping you can talk to us and tell us, what is a personal board of advisors?
Absolutely. It is, for me, the way that I answer this question is it's the single most important thing that I have developed for my personal and professional success. And that sounds like a very, very big, lofty response, but when I come back to it, we are people that are built for community and connection. And I feel that as a society, we are realizing this let me do it all by myself is not quite as amazing as let me find the experts in something and get really smart really fast and surround myself with good people and succeed much quicker. So when I think of a personal board of advisors, what this is it's a hand-selected, chosen group of advisors or people that you surround yourself with that can help you with advice, that can help you with questions you may have. They could be subject matter experts or people that have been in a field that you want to get into. So people with some wisdom to be able to share. One thing I will say with advisors is it is not simply just finding a lot of mentors that know the things that they can impart to you. I know, Lisa, from the position of coaching, there is so much value in having a coach that brings things out of you, or maybe somebody who's really, really good at asking the good questions and really getting you to think about things. So a board is a diverse group of people that you surround yourself with to help you succeed.
And do you see that board as all individual mentors that sort of come together? How does the concept relate to mentoring?
With mentoring, I would say that people's boards can look different. You always want to build a board of advisors based on what you need. We build it first from, okay, what am I good at? What do I feel like I understand really well? And what are the areas where I need a little support, or I need an outside opinion, or I need somebody who has been there and done that and can give me the wisdom? So everybody's board looks different. But when we think of mentorship and when I think of people's boards and they say, well, Kate, what roles do I have on my board? And I always say, well, where are you? Go through your assessment piece. What do you need? But a mentor is one that I always recommend people to have. When I think of mentorship, I think of those people that are a little bit more advanced in whatever the career or industry or maybe even skill that you want to develop. Somebody who's been there, a little bit trial by fire. Also somebody that is in wanting to help you grow. And I think of mentors, and Lisa, this is something that you have in spades and have shown time and time again, is it somebody who is interested in helping you to progress. So they have an interest in helping you to become a better person, a more successful business person. So mentorship to me is one of the keystone roles that I recommend everybody have in their board.
Great. And so your boards of advisors, they can be mentors, they can be coaches, they can be advisors, they can play different roles at different times. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So speaking of board, I've been spending a lot of time thinking about boards of directors. And one of the conversations that you and I had in preparation for this was that what you're talking about isn't a board of directors. You've actually very carefully chosen the word advisors. So can you talk to us a little bit about that distinction and why it's important to be thinking about it as a board of advisors versus a board of directors?
Absolutely. It is I spent a lot of time researching when I was first digging into this topic and just trying to understand what is the difference between advisors and directors. Are they the same thing? Is it just some marketing at play that it's same thing, and they go by different names, and it's not. Really, when we think about a board of directors, and let me rewind real quick. Lisa mentioned in the intro, one topic that really closely ties to this board of advisors is being the CEO of your life. So when I'm talking about building a board of advisors or going forward and finding success personally, emotionally, I always talk about operating out of this place of being the CEO. If you are in charge, you're making the decisions. You're the one at the helm of the company, which is your life. So really thinking about it in that way, a board of directors plays an important role in a company because they have a fiduciary or financial responsibility. They have more of a business role in the company, helping it to succeed, helping to make those tough decisions. Very important, but not what we're talking about here. When we're talking about a board of advisors, this is more often some CEO or even a person in a company create themselves, again, based on, okay, I might be the CMO, I might be a Kickstarter rocket marketer. I know exactly everything I need to do about marketing, but I don't really know how to lead a huge organization, or I haven't really worked for a Fortune 500 company, or I haven't worked for a startup. A board of advisors is somebody that you proactively hand select to help, again, advise instead of direct. So thinking of ourselves as the CEO of our life, with a board of advisors, their role is to help bring us a diversity of thought and ideas. Our role is to listen and make the decision. The buck stops with us. So with the advisors, and that's why I clearly choose that word, is it really is people that you ask to give you advice. And really at the end of the day, your success is on you, and you need to decide and weigh through, okay, this works for me, this doesn't. Oh, I haven't thought about that, but I have to make a decision right now. So, let me be the switchboard operator and figure out how all of this information comes together. But with advisors, it really is that giving the advice piece, and the responsibility is on you to make the choice of how to implement that.
Kate, I love that concept. It's so related to mentoring. Of course, it's, being an advisor is a form of being a mentor as well. But one of the things that I often get asked is, what from mentees is, what happens if I don't like my mentor's guidance? And, it's the same concept of you as the CEO of your life, you as the mentee are really in control, and you know what suits you. So it's really about being the advocate for yourself, just as you would with the CEO. We have a couple great questions already that have come in through chat. So let me field some of those.
Awesome.
How did you select your last advisor? What was the need you were seeking to fill, and how did you select that particular person? Thanks, Marcel, for that question. So let me say it one more time. How did you select your last advisor? What was the need you were seeking to fill, and how did you select that particular person?
The last advisor that I needed to add to my board was actually a coach. And that came out of doing some self-assessment. When I talk about building a personal board of advisors, there's 3 steps or kind of phases, I would say, that we go through: assess, assemble, and act. So from an assessment piece, I spent a lot of time assessing, okay, what are my goals? Where do I want to go? And like I've said a few times, really assessing what are my strengths and what are areas where I'm going to be best served by introducing some outside expertise to help me get to my goal. So the process that I went through to figure out who I needed to what role I needed to identify, let alone the person, was a lot of self-assessment and a lot of understanding, what is my goal? How do I get there? What do I need to augment? Actually selecting my advisor, I asked my trusted friends. I asked my own advisors that I have right now. I realized I think I need a coach. Here's why. The why piece is really important as well. I needed a coach because I needed that accountability. I needed somebody who would call me out, who would be direct with me, who also would tell me things that I didn't always like. I love, Lisa, what you said about, well, what if I don't like what my mentor says? Good. That means you get to take a choice of how you respond to that information. You want people around you that can kind of make you think of things in different ways. So I really went through personal recommendations for somebody that played that role for me, that I needed to build that relationship where I would listen to them when they told me the hard things. I started with my friends and my people that I trusted in my network and said, hey, do you have a business coach? Do you have somebody that helps you in this way? Asked a lot of follow-up questions. Questions are gold. And then I went through and I interviewed quite a few different people because I knew for me, personality fit was important. And it took a little while. That's another thing I will say with advisors is it will take some time to build your board, and that's okay. Probably shouldn't be done right away overnight. That, it seems if it is put together that quickly, I would question how in depth you went with your analysis of what you need. So I hope that answers your question, but that was really the process I went through for the last person I added to my board.
I love that. Assess, assemble, act. Assess, assemble, act. It's not a ready, fire, aim kind of thing, right? I mean, it really is a methodology to it, and that reflection is so important. Another question that came in, how many advisors should we plan for? 3, 7? How many is a good number?
Really good question. I would start with pulling an arbitrary number out. I like odd numbers because to me, it makes things feel a little bit on edge. You're like, oh, if you have an odd number of people, that means, again, the buck stops with you. You make that final even person if it is a 50-50 selection. So I would say if you are really new to building a board of advisors, start with 3 people. Really think about, okay, again, what am I really good at? What are my goals? What am I trying to achieve? Who are some people that can help me get there? I'm actually working on some worksheets right now because I get this question a lot of, okay, well, what are even different types of roles that I should be thinking about? And do I need a mentor and a coach and somebody that can proof my email? Like, how granular should we get? And really, when I think of the advisory roles, you may have somebody that could play a mentor and a coach in the same role. You may have somebody that really just needs to be that accountability where you say, okay, I need you to keep me accountability on this timeline, check in with me in this way, and that's all they do. Maybe they don't offer extra advice or some of those mentorship ideas. So I would say start with 3 because it will help build that habit. It seems a little bit more attainable. But then your board will grow and constrict as you have needs. So one of the things I always say, I usually have a visual, but assess, assemble, act is a triangle. So for the foundation, you start with, you assess what you need, you assemble, and then you act at the top, but then you've got to go right back down to assessment. Is this working? Is there anything that I need to update? So this really is, it could also be a circle. It really is something you want to constantly go through. So start with 3, identify some personalities, some traits, see who in your own network maybe already exudes those type of personalities or skill sets, approach them, see if there's a relationship fit. And then you can always add as you need more people.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting because maybe what you need is you need a couple mentors, but in different areas. For example, I'm in the process of finding 2 mentors for myself, one in the area of thought leadership and one in the area of, I'm about to embark on a personal physical challenge to do some Everesting, which is hiking up the level. I'm not going up Everest, but I'm going the level of Everest from hiking through an event. So I need a physical, somebody who's there to help me guide with the physical piece. So and actually, I really want a mentor in both areas. So it's really interesting to think about. Another great question that came in. What happens if you get to a point where you have too many voices and there's just so much noise or unsolicited advice that's circling? What do you do and how do you manage that?
Yes, that is one that I have heard people say, and I have actually dealt with that quite a bit myself. So one thing that I would say is when you have a lot of voices, the first thing is step back and say, how many of those unsolicited pieces of advice, which kind of tells the answer to the next question, have you asked for? Because people love to hear themselves talk. They love to feel important. We all do. But that doesn't mean that you have to listen. That boundaries is actually just to try to bring it back to the Twitter answer. It's setting boundaries with people. So it's thinking about how many of those people have you invited in? How many of those people would you consider a close friend, an advisor, a confidant, somebody whose opinion you trust? Put them over here. Everybody else, thank you for your opinion. I'll take that under advisement. End, right? Set that boundary of, I hear you. Thank you. The end. It's not rude. It kind of shuts down the conversation, but it also helps to set that boundary of, I haven't proactively asked for your advice. I'm not in a position where I'm ready to receive that. Or maybe you don't need to tell them this. I don't really agree with you, or we don't have the same values. You're not looking at this in a way that aligns with my value system. So not only is it a diverse piece of information or a recommendation, but it actually doesn't align with who I am as a person. So again, thank you. I'll take that under advisement. Going back and spending more time with the people that you have on your board or the people that you would trust, it's getting very clear about communication. If you have advisors that are just constantly bombarding you with, you should do this and you should do that, should is a key word there, Lisa. You have my absolute favorite that you actually have used with me multiple times is don't should on yourself. If people are saying should, that to me is a little bit of more of a trigger phrase of, okay, you're dispensing recommendations instead of helping me to maybe come to an answer, right? Asking some of those good questions. So it takes some boundaries. It takes some clear communication. And that is one thing I will say when you're setting up with your advisors, if they are people that you have a relationship with, and I say that someone said once, well, do my advisors have to know? And I said, well, honestly, not necessarily, because Brené Brown's one of my advisors and I receive information from her in a mentorship way by listening to her podcast. For the people that you have a relationship with that are on your close board of advisors, it's being very clear about the communication, asking for advice, receiving advice, even the way that, that's why I say relationship is important. Tone of voice and how somebody answers a question is really important. Somebody saying, oh, well, that's the craziest idea ever. And well, why would you even ask me that question? Somebody may not be offended by that. I am a very emotional creature. I'm a very empathy person. I'd be like, oh my gosh, like you have to find people that react well and will communicate in a way that helps cultivate you instead of suppress you or just make you feel on guard. Like, oh gosh, okay, I don't want to ask that person questions because they give me 19 pages or 19 emails of a response.
Yeah, such a great point. We in our mentoring model, we talk about the importance of really negotiating, which is establishing agreements up front. And if you're going to have somebody on your board of advisors, setting that boundary of what's the relationship and what's the expectation is really key. I think the other thing, if I can add, Kate, is just recognizing it's so often when we have boards of advisors, we find this power imbalance that we're sort of on our heels and just in the receiving end, as opposed to in relationship and in conversation with. And to make the most of an advisory relationship, you really do have to be in conversation with, not just in reception, but in conversation with. So if there's advice that doesn't sit, circling back and saying, here's what I did, and really staying in that relationship. Lots of great questions coming in. What are your thoughts on having a friend become somebody on your board of advisors?
I think that's a great idea. I think it just comes back to, again, Lisa, you hit the nail on the head, having that understanding of what the relationship is. So thinking about before you have a friend, and you may realize they may already truly be on your board because you go to them for advice, you trust them, they fill an area where you feel that you'd like to augment. So you may find out, oh gosh, I just need to put a name on it. They're my friend, but they also are on my board of advisors. But one thing I would say, if you're looking to invite somebody who is a friend into a different role in your life, be very clear with them about what is the expectation, and even setting some boundaries around, when we hang out and we're going on a walk with the kids, or when our families are together, or when you and I are catching up over coffee, I want to maintain this friendship, but there are certain times where maybe it's a verbal cue. I'm going to say, okay, I need you to put your advisor hat on. I need you to play this role for me. So just be very clear, because it is important to have advisors that you do have a relationship with, which makes a friend a great one. But you also want to be very clear that some people, again, with communication, you want to make sure that you're not going to sacrifice a friendship just to try to get some advice from them or have them play that role. So just being clear on what you expect from them and how it may or may not change the friendship is something that I would think about with that. But I think a friend is great because you already have that trusted relationship with them.
These are such great questions. So one more question that came in. How about, do you have any tips on finding an advisor who specializes in setting great boundaries? That's a great question. We've talked about boundary setting in terms of something you have to do with your advisor, but how about getting some advice from an advisor on how to set great boundaries?
I would say the way that I would approach that, thinking through that, and these are amazing questions. Please keep them coming. I love them. The way that I would approach that is I would look at people that I find have had some, either an industry change or they have faced some sort of adversity, whether it be a female raising, accelerating to a senior level in a tech company 15 years ago. They overcame quite a bit of adversity to be able to play that role. Maybe it's somebody who has had kids and also balanced playing a certain role in a company or started their own company. Look for people that have had some adversity, because when you think about people setting boundaries, you want somebody that's had a lot of practice. You want to ask somebody for their advice when they've been through it quite a bit. And setting boundaries means that they have had to do things that are uncomfortable. And they have probably had an influx of information, like you said, all of this advice coming in. So look at people that have overcome some sort of adversity, or think about people whose stories you've heard. Maybe you've heard somebody on a panel, maybe you've heard somebody on a Zoom call like this. Maybe it's somebody on LinkedIn or you've heard on a podcast. Reach out to them, find them, connect with them and say, hey, I really liked what you said about X, or I remember you talked about this being a really tough time and you had to get really clear on what you found to be important and set clear goals and had to kind of strip away everything else, and reach out to them and just say, hey, what was your thought process for setting some boundaries? So even finding those people, I'd say start with people that have overcome some adversity, start with people that have been in uncomfortable positions, because I have a feeling they'd have some really insightful advice. And maybe they could even say, I don't feel I'm the person, or I don't have the bandwidth. Here's a couple questions I would ask somebody. Think about talking to this person. They may be able to make an intro to somebody else or give you some more questions to ask to hone in your search.
Super great advice. So I want to shift just a little bit to the idea, as we record this, it's I wish it was February. I almost said February, but believe it or not, it's the end of April 27th, and we're in the, week 8 or week 9 here in Washington of our stay-at-home order and COVID-19. Let's talk a little bit about what does all of this mean, having a board of advisors in the time of COVID-19? What's the relevance now, and what can we do now to make the most of this time in terms of forming a board of advisors?
I would say now more than ever, it is so incredibly important, because there is so much change happening and there is so much that is coming up for each of us that probably wouldn't be brought to the surface in normal daily life. We're having potentially a lot more free time for some of us. We're having a lot more, I have family, I have all of these obligations, all of this is happening at once under one roof. We're finding ourselves in an unprecedented time. And no matter where you fall on having, still having a job or having the home responsibilities that you may have, we are all being asked to really assess who we want to be through this time and how do we want to come out on the other side. What better time to surround yourself with thought leaders and mentors and people you can talk about this with. I know we can do Zoom calls, but the feeling of loneliness and isolation is very, very real. Nothing can replace human interaction. So one thing that I would say is the importance of building a board of advisors right now is that people are far more open to connecting. If we're all going about our normal day and we're not in this mindset of, okay, all of us are assessing what this means and how to go forward, I have a feeling you will find if you reach out to somebody on LinkedIn, you connect with them, always add a personal note. One thing I would say when you're building a board of advisors, LinkedIn is great. Always add a personal note. I heard you on X podcast. I love that you specialize in X, Y, and Z. I'd love to ask you one burning question I have about that. Or we have a great mutual connection, would love to stay in contact here. Something personal. People are more open to giving you a 15-minute coffee chat. When we think of building a board of advisors, it doesn't have to be this, let me set an agenda. You should always come prepared, but let me set an agenda. Let me be formal. Don't treat it like an interview. Treat it like a relationship. You're building a relationship with these people. What better time than now to even reach out to people you're already connected to, that you respect, a former coworker, a former boss, again, somebody you've connected to through a professional or a networking opportunity, and say, hey, it's been a while. I was thinking about you, or I read this article on X, Y, and Z. Would love to do a 15-minute coffee chat. Just see how you're doing and
I
continue
love that
relationship with them. So now is a great time, because so many of us still feel isolated and potentially have the time or the need to really activate a board of advisors. And people are very open to that right now, of just, and set a time limit. Again, would love to spend 15 minutes. Let's both get a cup of tea or coffee and just catch up. Doesn't have to be formal, doesn't have to be, I have 7 burning questions. Just as a human, I want to connect with you. I really want to see how you're doing.
100%. And one of the other things that I think is so important about that is that your first question to somebody and your first conversation isn't going to be, will you join my board of advisors, right? You have to build the relationship before you make the ask, just like you would, just like we would when you're finding a mentor, right? You don't go in and ask somebody to marry you when you first had the first 15 minutes of coffee. You're not going to do the same thing with a board of advisors. It's a really important relationship. And, you don't have that sort of intimate ask until you have the relationship. So it's a great time to build those relationships as well. I just want to add one thing to it, Kate, that I've been thinking a lot about, which is this time, even if for those of us who work from home all the time, has been a time of reflection and learning about yourself. And to me, the biggest gift we can give ourselves from this COVID-19 is this gift of taking the time to reflect on what have we learned about ourselves during this time, and what have we learned about what we need to learn during this time. And that will really help inform the board of advisors. So we have 4 minutes left. I know you are squeezing me in between many meetings, which is another reason that I love you. And I want to make sure to give you a chance to talk about what you're working on, how folks can find you, and anything else you want to leave us with, Kate.
And I want to piggyback off what you just said. I love that. I just posted something on Instagram along those same lines. Is the best gift you can give yourself is the gift of resting right now, or the gift of really taking that time to be introspective. It's not a gift we often give ourselves. I'm finding that so much for myself right now. I'm actually 6 months pregnant with our first. And so I'm just really tired right now, honestly. And I want to be productive, and I want to do all these things, and I want to finish this worksheet I've been working on and do all of the things. And I'm just finding that the gift of really being reflective is one of the best gifts you can give yourself. And even if it's 5 minutes and just doing a check-in with yourself in the morning, again, it doesn't have to be this formal, long process. Taking that time to check in and celebrating the wins is another thing that I will say. I speak with a lot of women's groups, and one thing that I find through women, through feedback from women, is that we don't celebrate the things we do well. We just kind of, okay, I accomplished that thing, and we move on. All of us, men, women, parents, single people, every single person, we are getting through something really, really tough. Take the time to step back and say, I really showed up for myself in XYZ way, and really celebrate that. So to go back to your question, I just had the little, I have to speak to that.
I love it.
People can find me on my website. Instagram is the account I'm most active on. It's just _Kate Sommer. And I'm doing a couple of additional webinars, trying to take this time to broaden who I can connect with, since we don't all have to be in the same room. I'm doing an upcoming webinar, if you find it interesting, on how to build a board of advisors. So we go through that assess, assemble, act. What are some of the roles? What are some of the questions you can think about? Different tactics for reaching out to people to be able to say, hey, start to build that relationship, to then give the ask. So I've got a number of different things going on. Head to the website, katesummer.com. That's where you can find it. But for any questions, I know I wish we had another half an hour. I just want to keep hearing all the questions. For any questions that didn't get answered, please feel free to either shoot me an email, kate@katesummer.com, or send me a DM through Instagram, and I would love to be able to take some time and respond to them. They've been really insightful. So any that we didn't get to, please send them my way. I'd be happy to take some time and respond.
Great. And it's not summer like the season. It's summer, SOMMER. So Kate, KATESOMMER.com. Kate, always a joy. Thank you for stepping up and talking about this really important topic right now, and wishing you health, safety, continued connection. And thank you everybody for joining. We'll have this posted on our YouTube channel and on our Facebook page for Center for Mentoring Excellence, so you can watch it and send it to your friends as well. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.